Alumino Director Garba Simonian visited Maitland earlier this week to try to get Council's approval for the $15 million aluminium recycling plant. But he went away disappointed, threatening to take the matter away from Council. He lived up to that promise today, applying for a commission of inquiry into the application to create a plant to produce dross, an aluminium byproduct. The department will talk to Council and the developers before making a decision on the inquiry. But Maitland Council General Manager Mark Fitzgibbon says Council is more than competent to take care of the matter itself. He says decisions that affect local communities should be made on a local level.
Faced with greater liabilities than assets, the 4 directors of Chicago Bar and Grill and Confetti's nightclub appointed on Monday Sydney accountant Star Dean Wilcox as administrators. Today, Ron Dean Wilcox explained the situation. Confetti's directors, American-born brothers Kenton and Kevin Williams, declined to comment on camera today, fearing for their safety after receiving verbal and physical threats of violence. However, they did say with $600,000 in capital, they believed they had enough backing to start the business. Ron Dean Wilcox listed initial trading losses and overcosting on the premises fit-out as major reasons for the club's financial problems. It's claimed the original fit-out quote agreed on with Sydney contractor Classic Interiors was $225,000. This blew out by an extra $350,000. Confetti's directors largely attribute the massive blowout to a major difference between the prices quoted by subcontractors and the Sydney contractor, citing one case where an air conditioning subcontractor's bill of $42,000 jumped to $72,000 at the contractor's end. Confetti's directors have taken legal action against the Sydney contractor over the blowout and maintain they aren't answerable to the currently unpaid subcontractors.
At this stage, the company, being Chicago Bar and Grill, Confetti's and Newcastle Proprietary Limited, denies any claims in relation to those subbies.
At a meeting in Newcastle on Monday, the administrator will outline the company's situation to its more than 100 creditors. At a second meeting a few weeks later, creditors will decide if to liquidate the business or let it continue to trade with payout fees agreed on. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. It was the Knights' final stretch out on home turf before travelling to Sydney for Sunday's season opener against South Sydney. Coach David Waite says the game against this year's Challenge Cup winners will be tough, but he's confident the Knights will impress.
We've got a new look backline. That doesn't mean that we're not capable of knocking over this mob, but the killer rabbits can turn into bunnies very quickly over 80 minutes, and the pressure's on them, not us.
Many eyes will be on the Knights' newcomers, especially the Andrew and Matthew Johns 5'8" and halfback combination. For Andrew, it's season number 1 in first grade. Waite says this year the Knights' trademark defence will feature, together with a few changes in style.
We've worked very hard to regain that sort of impetus in 1994. And like in previous seasons, we hope to improve our try-scoring capabilities. We've added pace, we've certainly got added flair.
State MP Kerry Chikarovsky opened the exhibition called Women in Parliament, Then and Now. It honours female New South Wales parliamentarians since the first woman made it into the House in 1925.
We want to promote the idea that women in Parliament is a good thing. We should have more of them, and we want people to understand how many we've got there now. We've just elected our 10th woman to the lower house of the New South Wales Parliament. We have 15 in the upper house, which means that they now confirm a quorum. We'd like to encourage more women to think about politics as a career.
Mrs Chikarovsky and local MP Wendy Machin are prime examples of the impact women have made in politics. Both hold ministerial portfolios. Chikarovsky as Minister for Industrial Relations and the Status of Women, and Machin as Minister for Consumer Affairs.
The winner paid $4.80 in $1.60, station hand $2.10, with a disappointing mahogany paying $1.30, the Quinella $22.30, the trifecta $94.50. The Winfield Classic was the feature event in Sydney, a wall of horses greeting the judge at the finishing post. Capchat the winner paying $12.90 and $4.10, the minors $7.30 and $2.70, the trifecta $2,973.90.
"31-year-old Ernesto de Prado from East Maitland is fighting for his life in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital after he was viciously bashed on Friday night. De Prado had been drinking at the Albion Hotel in Wickham. Police say he had an argument with another man and was asked to leave the pub.
The man left the hotel, and 5 to 10 minutes later he was found on the footpath, bleeding in a semi-unconscious state.
Ambulance officers treated De Prado outside the hotel. He was taken to the John Hunter Hospital, having suffered multiple head injuries. Police have launched an investigation into the incident.
We're asking the public to come forward and assist us in relation to these inquiries.
Anyone with information should contact Newcastle detectives. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The 22-year-old spent almost an hour in rough seas off an isolated part of the coast north of Catherine Hill Bay until rescuers were alerted to his plight. The man's dog had been swept from the rock shelf and he'd gone in after it. He managed to support the animal until it sank from his arms and he found himself in trouble.
It was very, very rough, yeah.
And there was no way out from where he was?
No way except for an IRB to get in there and get him out.
A standby helicopter being used while the region's Westpac chopper is down for repairs manoeuvred to where the man was floating off rocks. Not equipped with a winch, the helicopter dropped a life raft to keep the man afloat until he was reached by a Catherine Hill Bay Surf Club crew in an inflatable rescue boat.
First thing that went through my mind was that we would not even be able to get him out until we set him in the life raft, and that gave us about 2 seconds to think, and we were able to get him out.
The exhausted patient was brought ashore and treated for cuts and hypothermia. He was taken to the John Hunter Hospital for observation, but was later allowed to leave. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. The Knights were on the attack from the start. First point's a field goal. Next, the Johns brothers set up the Chief off a pass from McCormack. McCormack instrumental again, getting captain Mark Sargent over for the Knights' second try. The Rabbitohs fought back. Paul Mellor was too big and too close to hold out. Harrigan hit back. Second half and the Rabbitohs were back with a vengeance, putting points on the board. Then Robbie McCormack got one in of his own. But Jamie Ainscough saw another go begging. Nothing uncertain about this try for Andrew Johns. Then Adam Muir got in for his chop as well. A few minutes before full-time, Andrew Johns was in again. Full-time score 43-14. Newcastle's reserve grade winners 20-0 and President's Cup 22-16 against South Sydney. Country Origin clinched the victory late in the second half to maintain an unbeaten record in the 12-team competition. Two of the Country Origin stars, captain Jim Fenwick and David Campese, have been selected in the Australian Sevens team for Hong Kong in 2 weeks' time. Country's David Kelleher was named player of the tournament. In the consolation final, combined services accounted for Victoria to take the bowl 26-12, while Country number 1 beat the ACT Kookaburras 42-19 to take the plate.
Two months ago, Darren Stewart had thoughts of putting pen to paper for completely different reasons. He and most of the team threatened to quit over a dispute with former coach Jim Foley. Today, all that was forgotten when he came to terms with the club in a deal that will probably see out his playing future. Stewart is now contracted until the end of the 1996 season.
There was a few other offers, but this year I seriously haven't thought about them because I'm so impressed with the setup and how things are run at the moment.
Star goal shooter Warren Spink has also signed on until the end of 96.
The recognition now from the two signings that everything is back on a level playing field for the players when we're looking for the future. It was important for us to sign both Darren and Warren because we're going to build a team around them for next year.
The club is starting negotiations with prominent players earlier than normal, so the big names can be used as carrots to dangle in the front of young players with potential.
We need to get a little bit more experience in the side, but we also need to leave the door open for the younger up-and-coming players here in Newcastle.
The signings have left a few people wondering just how the cash-strapped club could afford them. But it's understood while the new contracts don't include a big pay rise, there are plenty of incentives and long-term jobs as development officers.
Don Rygrock is a master at his craft, and it's one many would envy. For the last month, he's worked up to 16 hours a day moulding 4 tons of chocolate into thousands of shapes and designs. So committed are Don and wife Dorothy that they close their Dutch cake shop while the Easter display is put together. Tomorrow, though, all the hard work pays off when they reopen the Beaumont Street business. Today, Dorothy was putting the finishing touches to the display, which is one of the largest in the country. So impressive is Don's work that Cadbury's is eagerly awaiting the finished result. And they're not the only one. Since the Dutch cake shop was first established in Weston 35 years ago by Don's parents, it has tempted and delighted the taste buds of thousands of Hunter customers. Even though Don's father is now retired, the tradition of fine chocolate making lives on.
It's a very demanding process, the chocolate work. It is a little bit demanding, but also I derive much pleasure from the result of the chocolate.
It's definitely something very special to the Dutch people and to all the Newcastle people. It's unique in itself that nobody makes them and paints them like this anymore. Don really is still carrying on a dying art.
To make this year's display so spectacular, Don and Dorothy have imported hundreds of Dutch moulds, and the finished product is always different. No matter how good a chocolate looks, the true test is always in the eating. Don uses only quality milk chocolate, and take it from me, it tastes good.
A submarine stern section being floated down the Hunter River from Tomago and a hull midsection dwarfing a road transporter this morning both had a date with the monster heavy lift vessel Happy Buccaneer in Newcastle Harbour. The sections for the Navy's new Collins-class submarine were built at the ASC Shipbuilding Tomago Yard over the past 15 months. About 50 people worked on the specialised units, together weighing about 280 tonnes. The hull midsection comprises the all-important submarine escape hatch and is made of special-grade steel. It's an all-day loading job to get the sections into the ship. They'll need to be securely lashed in the hold for their trip for assembly in Adelaide. The Happy Buccaneer is due to leave port tonight, but the ship's skipper is keeping a careful eye on big seas off the coast.
According to some retailers and property owners, the City Centre Committee, in charge of revitalising Newcastle CBD, is asking too much for too little. Last year, property valuations in the area increased. This year, they'll remain the same. But despite this, the City Centre Committee wants to raise the benefit levy to support a number of projects, a move bitterly opposed by some ratepayers.
I personally, at the moment, pay about $250. That will go up to over $700. And frankly, I'm not prepared to pay that.
Janet Smith, an antique dealer in Newcastle's West End, says businesses in her area are disadvantaged from promotions centred around the mall.
On the special days they have, the crazy days and so on, are our worst trading days because it's all focused on the mall and the city centre, and it just takes people away from here. So really, those are disastrous trading days for us.
At a public meeting tonight, property owners will be asked to support a $1 million council-approved operating budget, its formulators claiming ratepayers will be no less out of pocket than previous years.
The total package will be less than the total amount paid in 1992, so that we are in fact funding the whole of the city centre operations with less council rates than 1992.
During January, states of emergency were declared in 33 local government areas, including Newcastle, Lake Macquarie, Cessnock, Singleton and Gosford. With the threat now only a memory, councils have begun adding up the cost. While some of the money will come from council funds, most will be reimbursed through the Department of Bushfire Services Emergency Fund, contributed to by the federal government. Lake Macquarie and Newcastle councils are seeking around $250,000.
Well, that covers the cost of hiring bulldozers and water carts, feeding of firefighters, repairing of vehicles, radios, council staff, demand control centres and those other costs that councils have met.
Gosford was also hard hit by the fires. However, a costing estimate was not available today. In Cessnock, around $220,000 was spent by council. A high proportion of that is expected to be claimed through the department. Singleton Council also puts the expenditure at around $250,000. They'll be seeking $175,000 through the department. General Manager John Flannery says the scope of the emergency was virtually unprecedented.
This is the biggest emergency of this nature that we've ever faced. Certainly the floods in 1955 were bigger, but in terms of natural disasters, this is the biggest disaster we've had since the 1955 floods.
Councils have until April 23rd to submit their reports and claims. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
The three businesses have been in receivership since June last year when they ran up a total debt of $1.6 million. Newcastle Council owns the property, and after knocking back a potential buyer of the upstairs nightclub and restaurant 2 weeks ago, gave the receivers notice of eviction. That eviction was due to be served at midnight tonight.
I have no idea. We pay the rent faithfully every week. We even paid back rent, which was made publicly knowledgeable to the community about 6 months ago. I have no understanding of why they're doing this. There's no relevant reason that I can see.
The 46 employees were told this morning how unstable their jobs are, just moments after receiving a nomination as the best regional specialty restaurant.
There's enough unemployment these days as it is, and putting 40 to 50 people out on the streets again is just, it's not on.
A hearing date is expected to be set in the next couple of months when the case will go to the Supreme Court in Sydney. While the law takes its course, the receivers hope they can find a buyer for the businesses and save the jobs of the staff.
They in fact paid money to us as a deposit to purchase the first floor. For some reason their submission was not accepted by council after going through all the process that they demanded. So I can't understand it, I'm afraid.
Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
Roadworks can often be a small-term pain for neighbouring small businesses, but eventually a long-term gain. But the 6.5 weeks punishment to this general goods store has removed thoughts of the future, as drivers take the Richardson Road detour and bypass the business. The operators claim their turnover dropped 20% overnight once the through traffic moved out and the heavy machinery moved in. Port Stephens Council says it's one of the unfortunate consequences of improving roads. But there is some good news, with the 6-kilometre stretch reopening tomorrow for 5 days, but with a 60-kilometre speed limit. It'll close for another 3 days before it's back to business for good.
Two-time Pulitzer Prize winner Anthony Lewis is one of the United States' most respected political commentators. He's just finished his latest book, the subject matter the basis for today's lecture at Newcastle University. A columnist for the past 25 years, he outlined a civil rights landmark case in America's Supreme Court which gave legal protection for journalists reporting on contentious political issues.
It imposed the rules of the First Amendment, our amendment which protects freedom of speech and press, for the first time in libel cases. And it transformed the law of libel to make it more protective of free speech and press, both, I emphasize.
According to Mr. Lewis, Australians don't have this protection.
As I understand it, you have traditional British common law, which, when someone sues for libel, presumes that the challenge statement is false, and that is then up to the newspaper, television station, or individual citizen to prove that it was true. That's a hard burden.
With freedom of speech allowing the media to publicly challenge government activity, Mr Lewis believes Australia's defamation laws can intimidate that process. But as far as changes through legislation...
Legislation is difficult, frankly, because politicians don't like to take away their own right to sue for libel. It's a good way of keeping the press in line, so I wouldn't have much hope of relief there.
The Hunter Academy of Sport has 12 development squads. It already has sponsors such as the Newcastle Knights supporting the Rugby League squad and the Northern New South Wales Soccer Federation, the soccer squad. However, the $3,000 cheque for the hockey players came from a surprisingly unrelated club.
This one is something exceptional, and I think even though it's hockey orientated, as the club has said that they are here to support not only rugby league but also all sports in this Cessnock area.
Two rising young hockey stars from Cessnock played a major role in the decision.
To eventually get to the Olympics, but at the moment for next year for the under-18 state team.
The annual sponsorship deal is expected to continue to the year 2000, when the Rugby League Supporters Club hopes to reap the rewards.
One of the influences there, of course, was that we had two girls locally in Cessnock that are part of the academy, and we thought with that local content it would be received very well from the point of view of the community.
It's excellent. It gives us a great opportunity to further our skills without having to pay quite as much.
Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
Police moved in on a Karula Road address after a week-long surveillance operation. Undercover detectives arrested 6 people in and around the house in the quiet Lambton neighbourhood. Police say the dwelling was a front for a drugs ring and have charged 41-year-old resident Christopher Philip Rose with possession, supplying and administering a variety of illicit drugs. Seized at the property was a quantity of heroin, cannabis, amphetamines and LSD. The other people arrested ranged in age from 19 to 29 and were all released on bail.
The Falcons strolled through the mid-morning workout as they prepared to erase the 26 points loss Brisbane dished out last time they played. Coach Tom Wiseman says the team will have to improve all aspects of its game to match the Bullets on court.
Hopefully tomorrow we'll be ready for their extended pressure, their full court pressure, and it'll be a good opportunity for us to handle that and to see where we are with the teams that are going to press and step up their defence on us.
Terry Dozier was a late starter this morning and may be a late withdrawal from the game. A light session didn't test his knee, which club doctors are still worried about.
The arthroscope proved there's nothing major wrong, and there's nothing they feel that he'll be doing any damage with, but it is swelling. There's a reaction to some pain that he's having, and so they're just working to try to control the swelling right now.
A win with or without Dozier is essential to the club's build-up to the official start of the season. Victory will give a great morale boost. A loss would give Brisbane a huge psychological edge in future games. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Redevelopment of the derelict building on the corner of Parry and Derby Streets has been considered on several occasions in recent years, but never come to fruition. Sandgate-based company Jensen Equity says their proposal to convert the 4-storey building to residential use is definitely going ahead with work scheduled to begin in May. The development will comprise 49 apartments, a corner store and coffee lounge and parking for 80 cars. Stage 1 of the development will see 10 2-bedroom and 5 3-bedroom apartments, ranging in price from $152,000 to $212,000. Clive Jensen, the manager of Jensen Equity, says the second stage of 34 apartments should get underway by November.
Mowbray and Morgan were busy making the last few preparations today for their historic journey. 37-year-old Mowbray hit on the idea last year, but wouldn't leave it just as a pipe dream. He sold his business, bought a boat and brought a mate along to make the dream a reality. They'll cover more than 6,700 nautical miles in about 2 months. It's cost more than $100,000 to buy the veteran of a dozen Sydney to Hobarts and prepare it for Sunday's launch. The crew will have fresh food for the first few weeks, but then it's on to the basics. But they'll have a few luxuries on board to ease those stormy nights.
But we've allowed ourselves 1 beer a day each for the duration, so we figure that's reasonable.
And these best of mates are confident that their friendship will last just as well as the Hunter endeavour.
Oh, he's not so bad. No, like you said, we've sailed together before, and yeah, we get along quite well. We've both got a sense of humour, which helps.
They'll set off from Queen's Wharf in Newcastle at about noon on Sunday, with all proceeds of their trip going to life education. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The man and a woman from Sydney, both aged in their 70s, were driving along Raymond Terrace's Hunter Street when their car was seen to bounce off one wall of the boat ramp, hit a rock embankment, then roll into the water just after 8. Emergency services were on the scene within minutes. Police and ambulance officers struggled to free the trapped couple from the partly submerged wreck.
As we arrived, the vehicle was still submerged in the water, and both people were still in the vehicle in their seatbelts and partially submerged.
Did you have any assistance in helping to get them out?
Yes, 2 bystanders came over to assist us, as well as the ambulance was here, and we managed to cut the belts off and get the people out.
The woman, who was a passenger in the car, died as a result of the accident. The 77-year-old driver was resuscitated and flown by the Westpac helicopter to the John Hunter Hospital, where he's now in a serious but stable condition. Police recovered suitcases from the car. It's thought the couple may have been passing through town and headed to the river for the view. The police accident investigation squad was called to inspect the vehicle.